new lawsuit has been filed, naming Jenifer Lopez as a material witness in connection with crimes allegedly committed by Diddy. The suit claims that Lopez was aware of Diddy's actions involving minors but chose not to intervene. Multiple witnesses are now coming forward, and reports indicate that 8 explicit tapes, along with 11 flash drives, have been submitted to the FBI as part of the investigation.
Back to Cardella Smith's filing. His notice says that Jenifer Lynn Lopez, aka J-Lo, aka Jenny from the Block, quote, will be called as a material witness and expert to Sean Combs' viewing, possession, and distribution of his sexual assault upon the plaintiff in 1997, and the orders of defendant Sean Combs forcing Jenifer Lopez to remain silent about the videotaped sexual assault of plaintiff by defendant. Plaintiff states that the material witness Jenifer Lynn Lopez, also known as J-Lo and Jenny from the Block, was engaged in a relationship with the defendant Sean Combs during 1999 and 2001, and that the sexual assault of the plaintiff was recorded, distributed, and held by the defendant at his New York residence and recording studio. And during the relationship with Jenifer Lopez, she was made privy to this video that was taken by Sean Combs and his employee Kirk Burrows. She, J-Lo, has known this video existed and was in existence and took no action to make it known to anyone in law enforcement, and that she was even questioned by New York Police Detective Derek Palmer about this matter, and that the report will show that her answers to this tape was and still remains a resounding yes to its existence. And again, Cardella Smith writes that he wants to call Officer Derek Palmer as a witness because he says Palmer is the one who questioned Lopez and believes that he will have testimony that could help his case. As I mentioned, Diddy's legal team has called for this entire case to be thrown out. Cardella Smith has filed a massive response to that request that totaled more than 200 pages. Probably half of it was just straight up copies of case law that seems to support his arguments, word for word. It's something out of like a legal textbook. There's so much to slog through, but I kind of want to give you some of the highlights. So first, in addition to the claims of rape and a cover-up, Cardella Smith also claims and alleges that Combs was violent towards his loved ones. At times, Cardella Smith addresses alleged threats against his family. Other times, he says Combs actually caused serious injuries to his brother. His response reads, defendant used threats of murder to force the plaintiff to not bring the case to any court of law enforcement until the homes of the defendant were raided by Homeland Security, that the plaintiff knew it was a safe time to bring the case, and that is why we are here at this juncture. And Cardella Smith argued that fear for his own safety and the safety of his family is one of the main reasons that he waited so long to report the alleged rape, and says that that reason alone should override any issue with the statute of limitations, that these claims might otherwise be time barred. And he also argues that while he's been in prison, fellow inmates and prison guards have threatened him.
It is alleged that Diddy's ex-wife, Kim Porter, was in the process of writing a book that would expose Diddy's criminal activities, which some believe led to her untimely death. The book reportedly contained details about Diddy's involvement in a sex trafficking operation. After her passing, the manuscript was thought to have been lost. However, now a close friend of Kim Porter, Courtney Burgess, has come forward and handed over the memoir to the FBI.
Statements include descriptions of what the witness says he saw on those tapes. So I asked him about that, and he answered what he could, given the limitations imposed on him after testifying before the grand jury. Out of those 8 videos, 8 celebrities, 6 men and 2 women, how many of those 8 celebrities were close to being underage or potentially underage?
2 males.
2 males. And of those 8 celebrities, how many of them were intoxicated or under the influence of drugs?
This is going to be all speculation. I just want to preface it by he wouldn't know if they were. Right.
Sure.
Appeared to
Let
be.
me rephrase
Right.
it.
Based on, yes.
Understand. Out of the 8 celebrities who were recorded having intimate relations with Sean Combs, how many of them appeared to be either inebriated or intoxicated or under the influence?
All of them. All of them.
Out of those 8, how many appear to be potentially victimized? How many might have been victimizing?
I think all, to be honest, all.
Were victims
They
or
victims.
were perpetrating?
Victims.
They were all 8 were victimized,
Yeah.
meaning
Victim.
this was happening to them and they were inebriated.
Right. Not knowing. I guess, how much proof it was in it of they was doing.
Courtney Burgess claims that Kim Porter entrusted him with 11 flash drives containing her memoir, along with 8 of Diddy's explicit tapes. All of this has now been submitted to the FBI. Courtney has been subpoenaed to testify in a federal criminal trial, and the tapes he provided have reportedly been shown to a grand jury. Kim Porter allegedly gave these tapes to Courtney because she feared for her life. The memoir also names several unnamed celebrities who reportedly helped Diddy establish and maintain his criminal empire. It reveals key figures in both Hollywood and the music industry allegedly involved in sexual activities with minors.
Is your client fearful if Diddy does get out?
As you know, I represent other clients, actual victims who have sued Mr. Combs, Diddy, in civil court, and all of them are very apprehensive about their safety if he were to be granted bond. I am confident in the court. I am sure that the court will remain with their previous decision of no bond. I feel like the judge only gave this, let me think about it, just to not make it as obvious. But I have all the confidence in the world and the federal court and the state of New York that they will remain keeping Diddy under no bond, and that all of the victims in this case will be able to proceed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I mean, you don't just represent this man, you represent other alleged victims too, and people involved. Have there been any threats made against any of your clients?
There have been threats from people on the internet, but not from, at least what we don't know, from Diddy to me directly. So my clients have, Mr. Burgess has received several death threats. My client, Mrs. Parham, has been receiving threats, but we don't know if they're just regular people from the internet or if they're actually people who were sent by Diddy.
Do you have any idea where the threats are coming from? I mean, have you done any investigation?
Well, most of the investigation leads us to a lot of burner accounts on Instagram, and we're trying to now sift through possibly working with law enforcement to try to get subpoenas to determine the IP addresses of where those threats were emanating.
So, okay, interesting. We know that the cease and desist letter has now come. Has there been any other pressure of any kind that you or your clients have felt to stop talking?
In general, I feel that the gag order, when we talk about that, Mark Agnifilio wrote about me specifically, and also all of the other plaintiffs in the civil lawsuits to try to have all of us gagged. There's pressure every day that is continuing to talk about this is putting not only our lives in jeopardy, but could be potentially used against us.
Diddy's sons have confirmed the existence of Kim Porter's memoir and are reportedly doing everything they can to get access to it. However, it is shocking that their primary concern appears to be the potential financial gain from the book's publication, rather than honoring their mother's intentions and the messages she wanted to share in her memoir.
He owns the rights to a book that was reportedly based on the alleged memoir of Kim Porter. In fact, according to TMZ, Burgess' phone was seized by the feds, and on it was a copy of a flash drive with material that was used in this book. Here's the problem. Christian and Quincy Combs, these are the sons of Diddy and Kim Porter. Quincy's actually adopted by Diddy. But they are reportedly fighting back, and they have sent Burgess a cease and desist letter to prevent the further sale of this book. They argue this is just an attempt to capitalize on Porter's fame and that they own the rights to her IP, her intellectual property, like her diary entries or potential manuscript. As her heirs, they own it. And they also want an accounting of current sales of the book. To be clear, though, they aren't acknowledging that there is, in fact, a long-lost memoir from their mother. In fact, they've actually denied that before when there was a similar book, a derivative work, we'll talk about that, published by this guy named Chris Todd on Amazon. They were adamantly fighting against that. They said that their mother wouldn't write this. But what they're basically saying is if something should exist, they own it.
New developments are unfolding in the ongoing legal cases involving Diddy. As new evidence comes to light, it is crucial that justice be served fairly and thoroughly for all involved. A recent lawsuit has been filed, with 3 men coming forward to share their allegations about events that occurred in 2006. It is important that these legal processes continue to unfold and that each individual's voice is heard as the investigation progresses.
You believe in these cases, and why didn't you believe in others that you were presented with?
Well, the thing with a abuser, a sexual abuser, is they follow a pattern. They fall to type, and you become very clear on what that pattern is, particularly a serial sexual abuser. And these cases were all identical in the facts, identical in the story. It was beginning, middle, conclusion,
They know each other?
boom. None of them knew each
Did
other.
you have them meet?
No.
Did you have them coordinate stories?
No. No.
Do you think they had any contact with each other before they came to you?
Absolutely not.
And when you were talking to them, well, first, the ones that you didn't take, why not?
Stories didn't make sense. Stories didn't fit the pattern. Stories were not credible. I mean, this is my 30th year as a lawyer. I've tried over 100 cases. I can assess whether somebody's story is credible. And if I don't believe it, I'm not going to put my name on a pleading, sign it, and file it in court. I'm not doing that. And that's what I did with the 60 plus cases that I rejected.
And this is not really your area of expertise. If people will look you up, celebrity lawsuits is not really where you make your bones. Why this?
Well, I was involved in the Weinstein litigation. Right. I was involved in the Paducah litigation. I was involved in the Hayden litigation. Why did I do this? I do this because it's important. I think it's important for people to be heard, have their chance to get the power back. Because sexual abuse, sexual assault is about one thing: taking power, humiliating, demeaning a person and a victim. It has nothing to do with sex. And so I think it's important. I think it's important to get the word out. I think it's important for men to feel, hey, look, I can come out and be heard just like a woman could.
And the defense that, look, they knew what they were getting into. These are regrets. They went there, they partied, and now they see a pocket.
No, I don't think so. My client
was... Were they gay men?
One was bisexual, the other ones were not. And they were going there. The client was bisexual, worked for Diddy. Diddy owed him money for doing errands for him and being his step and fetch, for lack of a better word. And I think it was a power move. It was a clear power move because this guy had the nerve to come to him and say, you owe me money. And so Diddy said, come on to the Intercontinental Hotel. He gives him the drug, knocks him out, sodomizes him. And I won't use the term that my client used, but he said he tried to turn me into his B word. And I think it was a clear power move on each and every occasion. I think the ones that took place in the Park Hyatt, that wasn't partying. My client met him in a nightclub in the city here with a music producer. He didn't think he was getting into that. The man who was raped in the Hamptons, he thought he was going to a white party. Who wouldn't want to go to a white party? I would have gone to a white party back in the day. I wouldn't go now. But they went there innocently, and this is what happened to them.
I never went. I appreciate you very much. We will find.
Ariel Mitchell, a lawyer representing an A-list celebrity who has bravely spoken out about their experience, has brought attention to important issues regarding Diddy's actions. She has highlighted efforts to bring attention to the existence of certain tapes, emphasizing the need for transparency and justice. Ariel's client has also courageously come forward with allegations of abuse, and she has been vocal in advocating for her client's rights. Despite facing challenges, Ariel is determined to ensure that her client's voice is heard, and she remains focused on securing a fair and just process.
Is your client fearful if Diddy does get out?
As you know, I represent other clients, actual victims who have sued Mr. Combs, Diddy, in civil court, and all of them are very apprehensive about their safety if he were to be granted bond. I am confident in the court. I am sure that the court will remain with their previous decision of no bond. I feel like the judge only gave this, let me think about it, just to not make it as obvious. But I have all the confidence in the world and the federal court in the state of New York that they will remain keeping Diddy under no bond, and that all of the victims in this case will be able to proceed sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and you mentioned, you don't just represent this man, you represent other alleged victims too, and people involved. Have there been any threats made against any of your clients?
There have been threats from people on the internet, but not from, at least what we don't know, from Diddy to me directly. So my clients have, Mr. Burgess has received several death threats. My client, Mrs. Parham, has been receiving threats, but we don't know if they're just regular people from the internet or if they're actually people who were sent by Diddy.
Do you have any idea where the threats are coming from? I mean, have you done any investigation?
Well, most of the investigation leads us to a lot of burner accounts on Instagram, and we're trying to now sift through possibly working with law enforcement to try to get subpoenas to determine the IP addresses of where those threats were emanating.
So, okay, interesting. We know that the cease and desist letter has now come. Has there been any other pressure of any kind that you or your clients have felt to stop talking?
In general, I feel that the gag order, when we talk about that, Mark Agnifilio wrote about me specifically, and also all the other plaintiffs in the civil lawsuits to try to have all of us gagged. There's pressure every day that is continuing to talk about this is putting not only our lives in jeopardy, but could be potentially used against us in a gag order.
Also was just recently contacted by someone who wanted me to essentially represent them in the sale of one of the Diddy tapes.
You're saying that there's tapes and they're being shopped?
Yes, there have been people already shopping.
We've heard about the tapes, but
yes.
The shopping thing is...
Yes, there already have been tapes leaking around Hollywood, being shopped around to individuals in Hollywood. But one particular person contacted me to shop a particular video they were in possession of, and to contact the person who was in the video to see if they were interested in purchasing the video before it became a public knowledge.
I've heard this before, so like a catch and kill.
Catch and kill, correct.
Wow, and I guess you can't reveal the person who is on
No, I can't explain who the person was, but
High profile?
Mr. Combs was in the tape, and this other person is, I would venture to say, more high profile.
Federal prosecutors and criminal defense attorneys alike suggest that Diddy may have no choice but to begin cooperating with federal authorities. The overwhelming amount of video evidence and witness testimony linking him to these alleged crimes makes it difficult to contest the charges. With nearly 40 lawsuits currently filed against him, it's understandable that Diddy would be concerned. An FBI officer who was present during the 2024 raid on Diddy's mansion has described the scenes they witnessed as deeply disturbing.
You know, for years, P. Diddy's gotten a hall pass. He's actually created his own kingdom where he makes his own rules, and you got to follow his rules or you get penalized. And guess what, Laura? He's now in a federal penitentiary, and for the first time in his life, he's facing his own fate at the hands of somebody else. And I will tell you, Laura, I've done federal cases, that's not the place you want to be in federal court. 90% of federal criminal indictments brought down are pled out, right? A plea deal is brought. And of the only 10% left, 90% of those defendants who go to trial, they lose. So he is looking at a daunting uphill battle to fight these horrible charges.
Now, Brian, one of the DHS agents involved in this raid on his Miami mansion described what he saw inside the house, saying that, in my opinion, he's as bad as Epstein. These women are young, either barely legal or barely illegal. Brian, this sounds like he was a monster.
Yeah, Laura, I will tell you that this indictment was very detailed, by the way, too. Your viewers should know there were over 300 subpoenas served, over 50 witnesses interviewed. Why is that important? Because the federal prosecutors aren't going to be leveling an indictment like this unless they have ammunition and they have cause to bring it. And the core issue at this case, which the feds have to prove, which it's looking like they can, is that P. Diddy essentially controlled these women, that he threatened them with stopping the money that he was paying them, that he spiked their drinks with drugs, that's been alleged in the indictment, and that he basically told them, I'm going to ruin your life unless you engage in these freak-offs. And that's really what the prosecutors got to prove. And if you've got some victims coming forward to talk about that, you've got financial records that prove that, travel itinerary that proves that, P. Diddy has very little defense. And I got to tell you, Laura, if this guy wants to fight these charges, he's going to have to step up and walk into a courtroom and talk about it. If he doesn't testify in this case, he is dead on arrival.
Well, who else is on these tapes? I mean, will the tapes ever see the light of day? I mean, that's what everybody's talking about. Who else is there? It's like with the Epstein, his pleasure island. Who else? Who went? Who was there? What's the manifest? But Brian, chances 1 being least likely, 10 being most likely, will we learn of other celebrities that were at these freak-offs?
Yeah, I think you've got an 8 or a 9 for a likelihood you're going to hear about it. Why? Because there are going to be more indictments coming down, Laura. That's an important point here, because he's being charged with racketeering and conspiracy. You're going to have, well, let's start on the inner circle. You're going to have former bodyguards. You can possibly have former musicians that he was with. You've got personal assistants that are going to be, they're already talking about this. Some of those are likely to be charged. And then guess what? If you've got some music moguls that are sending women over to these alleged freak-offs, then you've got some top people that are going to start crumbling too, because they're all part of what's called this criminal.
Former federal prosecutor Neela Romani stated that Diddy and Jay-Z are just the first individuals linked to this sex trafficking ring to be exposed. Following her interview, Jenifer Lopez and T.D. Jakes have also been mentioned in lawsuits. With Ashton Kutcher now preparing to testify against Diddy, it seems that Diddy's time may finally be coming to an end.
Now, as far as Jay-Z's concerned, this could really go one of two ways. This might be an isolated one-off case that he has to defend, or potentially it could be a Me Too type situation where other victims come forward. Obviously, we saw that with Diddy and Cassie Ventura. So the coming days and weeks are really going to be telling. And Tony Busby says there's more than 100, maybe up to 300 victims he's representing. So it's going to be interesting to see if any of them also name Jay-Z.
And Nima, if such a high-profile name like Jay-Z has come out, could more celebrity names be tied to these lawsuits? What do you think we can expect?
No question. This may just be the first celebrity domino, and Jay-Z was unmasked as celebrity A, but let's not forget there's a celebrity B in that same lawsuit that allegedly witnessed the sexual assault, a female celebrity. And there was someone who went on CNN earlier this week and said that his sexual assault was witnessed by another celebrity as well. So I think we're going to see more celebrity names identified very soon.
All right, Nima Rani, thank you so much for joining us. As you said, this is one that has entered the court of public opinion. It's nice to have your actual legal advice.
Diddy's own team, which once helped orchestrate these parties, has now turned against him and decided to cooperate with federal authorities. They are aware that it's only a matter of time before Diddy faces legal consequences and are seeking to avoid prosecution themselves. Diddy's former party planner, T.A. Wallace, has come forward, stating that she witnessed Diddy and his guests engaging with minors at his parties. Wallace admitted to attending a 2018 event hosted by Diddy, where she alleges she saw multiple minors being abused by a group of adults.
And I believe to be one of P. Diddy's freak-offs.
Now, singer-songwriter Tania Wallace told TMZ's Harvey Levin for the Tubi special, The Downfall of Diddy Inside the Freak-Offs, she believes she witnessed underage victims at one of Diddy's 2018 parties.
I'm looking like, are those midgets? Because it's people over them. Like, it's people trying to hide what they're doing.
Adults who are little people, or are you talking about minors?
Am I going to get in trouble? I don't want to say I witnessed any of that crazy stuff, but we all have common sense. Little people. It's not supposed to be there.
You're talking about underage people.
It's a shame.
Is this woman, Tania, is she really saying that there were minors involved in these freak-offs?
That is exactly what she's saying, Billy. Now, as for what they were doing, she never really could get a clean look at it. She said there was a wall of adults encircling them who clearly didn't want everyone at the party to see what was happening there. She said when she saw this scene with the younger people, that it was about 7 a.m. and that the party had been going all night.
Did anyone ask her why didn't she leave, and what was she doing?
She was there as the guest of a Saudi prince. Why she didn't leave, I don't know what time she left. I agree with you that once you see something like she's describing, that's the time to tip out the door.
Or call the FBI.
Or call the FBI, exactly. But, that's the other thing that we've heard from a lot of people who've been involved in parties with Diddy, that there are NDAs that are signed, and you walk out and you feel like, I can't say anything to anyone.
Today, Diddy's lawyer calls Tania's claims completely and categorically false. In brand new court documents, he insists the government has been leaking information suggesting falsely that he engaged in wrongdoing with underage victims, insisting there are none.
I love y'all so much.
We love you too.
And just a week after we heard his voice from jail for the first time on the phone with his...
I'm happy. Thank you, y'all giving me this call. Thank you very much.
The scandal surrounding Diddy continues to unfold, leaving little room for doubt. New witnesses, shocking evidence, and chilling confessions keep emerging, creating a damning portrait of one of the music industry's most powerful figures. With the FBI now in possession of tapes, flash drives, and a memoir that exposes a web of abuse, the pressure on Diddy is mounting. The question remains, will he cooperate with authorities, or will this story take an even darker turn? The ramifications extend far beyond one individual's actions, sending shockwaves through Hollywood and the music industry.